Kuzma, a tutorial level for life.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kuzma. I am a 28-year-old autism advocate, mental health advocate, and video game advocate. Yes, that is right, I did say video games. I have spent the past 10 years talking about autism, and over the past 1 to 2 years, I have mainly led into mental health and how we can use video games to help improve our day-to-day lives. Shocker, I know. Now, as a whether it's collecting gems as a lovely little purple dragon or collecting 1 billion guns as the Vault Hunters in Borderlands, we live lives that are quite similar to the video games we play. I have a feeling that looking at some of the audience, that may not be the case for some of you, but don't worry, there's going to be a lot of autism analogies and Star Wars references as well. Now, I grew up in a lovely little town called Lithgow, in a loving and caring Polish family. Now, Mum and Dad had different viewpoints of who I was. Mum noticed the more atypical types of matters, where Dad, he thought, oh, there's nothing wrong with my son. He didn't really realize the more atypical responses to their neurotypical behaviors. Little did I know, though, I was building a library of sorts in my head. An NPC library, if you will. Now, for those who don't know, NPCs, or non-playable characters, are characters that you see in the video games that you interact with. They can give you things like quests or resources, because Lord knows your Pokemon is going to die if you don't give him that potion. Or you'll have this chance to fight them in combat. Now, obviously, you're not going to fight Steve from accounting, but there are some matters that you will come into face with when it comes to hostile type situations. You may get into an argument with someone, or you may find yourself not agreeing with your grandma's thoughts on LGBTQI matters. Okay, boomer. So little did I know, but I was actually starting my own NPC, let's see if this works. Yeah, my own NPC library. This is just a little intro clip to my actual web series. But all this would actually get thrown out the door when I would go from living in lovely little Lithgow to a suburban area in the Blue Mountains. Now, the thing is, when I came from this lovely small town to a bigger, larger, more suburban type area, there were certain things that I didn't really understand. Now, you guys all know that that's an Ethernet cable. I was talking to a lot of people who had all these sarcastic type situations, and there was a lot of in-jokes. So for me, it was like being an Ethernet cable trying to plug into a USB cable, a port. There was no connection. Alas, I started to delve into the depths of depression and anxiety, and I started seeing a therapist. Now, at the same time of me getting this type of therapy, I was also playing a lot of video games. I was learning from Jack and Daxter about what it means to have true friends. That it's not, hidden behind 15 layers of sarcasm. And through Ratchet and Clank, I learned that you can have these coping strategies and coping tools that can help you wherever you may be. Now, obviously, you don't know what those items are, but they're gadgets and weapons. And so I noticed that he had an arsenal that he could go through. And that actually helped me in trying to figure out what I could do when I was facing the bullies. When I first noticed my work at Aspect, I noticed that a lot of the people on the spectrum had a hard time understanding what the teachers were getting them to say. So I decided to try and throw on my mentor hat, and that really started to improve the social situation. Now the thing is, when it comes to autism, we have certain matters that aren't exactly the right response to you neurotypical folk. When you think of things like ADHD, autism, and OCD, these aren't exactly matters that are what you would call a disability. Now, I might say that's a crazy notion, but what if I was to say we are neurodivergent people? For a lot of us on the spectrum, there we go. We are seen and put through this giant microscope and say, this is who you are, this is your life, this is what you're going to be. When we think about it, why aren't the autistic people and the people who are neurodivergent trying to talk to each other? Oh, hey, Tori. We aren't disabled. Our minds work differently. But the world we live in is built in a way that disables us. And that doesn't just go for us atypical and neurodivergent people, but that goes for people with all kinds of disabilities, as I had learnt from my good friend Scott here in the front row. It doesn't matter if you're deaf, blind, you realize that this world that we live in is catered to a specific type of person. And so it's all about trying to make sure that the world is more accessible for us. I'm a little bit upset because I actually had my own type of font that I was using, and we realized that it would really stuff up on here because it wasn't on the computer, so I was a little bit upset, but that's okay. Oh, whoops. There we go, don't worry. Now, oh yes, that came up wrong. Now the thing is, when it comes to socializing and going through the world of today, there's a lot of matters that we have to take into place. Now, for those who don't know, for a lot of people on the spectrum, we need social stories and visual tutorials that can help us understand where we're going in life. That was how I was able to get through high school and graduate into TAFE. I had the help of a lovely lady by the name of Belinda Karp, who showed me social stories about what it's like to be in post-school education. And nowadays, when I'm trying to work on anything, I'll go to YouTube for the first tutorial I can find. But the most important thing is, if you are going to try and develop these types of strategies, you need someone with a disability who is working with you. Now, why is it working like that now? Okay, sad story time. I'm sorry, this won't take too long. After graduating at TAFE and going to my first employment, which was Woolworths, that was the best goddamn checkout chick you've ever seen. Always make sure you flirt with the soccer mums and the old ladies and you'll do fine. I worked for an online TV streaming company. I won't say their name, but it wasn't Netflix. I love Netflix. Just no chill. When I was working for them, I was shoved into a wide variety of situations that you would never put a person on the spectrum. On my second day of filming, I was meant to film a boxing match literally inside the ring whilst there were two people punching blood, sweat, and tears into my face. All whilst I'm underneath a strobe light. Any person on the spectrum would have a meltdown right there and then, but I managed to keep it together. As Eddie Murphy says in Bowfinger, keep it together, keep it together, keep it together, keep it together. It all came to a head when I had to film a pub crawl. It was a large pub crawl down in the South Coast. Now, I like alcohol and I like the South Coast as much as everyone, but everything in moderation, especially alcohol. I was trying to film in this large pit of an area. There was loud, smelly drunks, noisy house music, and strobe lights everywhere. I kept trying to get out to cope with my situation, but my boss, who used me and then said that I was the one that was making excuses for myself when I had actual issues with what was going on, he said, "You're young. You should be enjoying this." And I had a mental breakdown. About 3 years before, I was delivering talks at TAFE. And during this time, I went and I met the lovely people from Aspect. and I started delivering talks with them. And they nominated me for an award. And it turns out I won! Not only that, I discovered I'd be going to the Asia Pacific Autism Conference. And I got to meet famous faces like Temple Grandin, John Elder Robeson, and Dr. Stephen Mark Shaw. Well, Temple Grandin was at another event, but that's just neither here nor there. I had a chat to John Elder Robeson, and I told him about my situation. I said, I want to be a great writer like yourself. What do I do? And I'm lost. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why I'm unemployable. How do I find myself? And he told me we are the sum of our own experiences, both the good and the bad. As much as we want to embrace the good times in life, we need to recognize the bad times as well, because these are the matters that help shape us and form us into who we are today. I delivered a talk recently to one of Aspect's schools, Western Sydney School, and I talked about failure. And for a lot of people who are parents, I'm sure there may at least be one or two autistic parents or parents of disabled children here. And they get coddled up a lot in life, and there's no room to fail. So when they go to the interview and, oh, sorry, we regret to inform you, boom, you've got a meltdown. The thing is, meltdowns are a way that we can really figure out what to do when we are stressed. I just came from a meeting, so I apologize if I'm rambling on. But this talk, this piece of advice here was like a shining beacon for me. I realized this is who I could be. I became my own blogger. I started writing a blog, which was seen by Aspect, and they hired me. Now, I not only mentor students at the school that I was bullied all those years ago, but I deliver talks across Australia on TV and across the waters in America, and I'm making my own web series. I've realized, I have reached the new world in my life. For those who don't know, those are the portals from Spyro the Dragon. So what can you take from my pontificating? Well, number one, open up your NPC library. Now, yes, that's the name of my YouTube TV show, but I'm allowing you guys to use this with your mental notifications of who is in your world. The thing about us is that society is kind of like built around a bubble. And when you hear things like autism or ADHD or OCD, it's not like someone goes, I want the disabled guy. The thing is, there's so much that we can bring to the table. Just like biodiversity and cultural diversity, neurodiversity can help you expand on your teams and just show you what you can really do. The next one is to keep your coping inventory close by. A lot of people don't really understand this because of the stressful world we live in today. We tend to forget that we have a whole brand of strategies that we can use whenever we are going through the working world. When I'm mentoring my students and they're having a meltdown, I realize that my advice may not work for them because I like video games that they might not like. But if I know what systems they enjoy, I can analogize something up and help them out there. For instance, I was just telling this yesterday at the dinner that I had a student melting down in science because she found out that if she had polio, she would never, get rid of it. And I said, okay, well, let's think of some good things and bad things. A good thing is catching a Pokemon, and that's pretty cool. A bad thing is, someone knocks out your Pokemon in a gym battle. And then these are things that are regularly happening. But what is something that is unlikely to happen that is good and bad? A really good thing to happen that is really rare is to get a shiny Pokemon. And she goes, oh, yeah. And I told her, you know what? I'll tell you what the bad part is when they use raw or they explode and you can't catch it. I had a coughing explode on me, and it was a shiny, and my heart sank. She calmed down, and I said, look, you see that exploding coughing that's so shiny? That's polio. It's never going to happen. She calmed down. And now, what I want to do is I want to finish this off with a quote by John Elder Robeson from his book, Switched On. I find it very difficult to read faces. It has taken me many years to work on this skill to adapt. But if you were to put me in a room with 10 black Mercedes, I could tell you the different years they were produced and everything that makes them tick. At the end of the day, I'm okay with my social difficulties because I know my skills lie elsewhere. I want to thank you guys very much. Here's my social media. For those who cannot see what's on the screen, sorry, Scott. On Reddit, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, you can find me as TK_Hubworld. On Twitter, I'm starting to use that TK thing, but if you want to catch my personal one, it's Thomas Kuzma91, just because I like you guys that much. And you can email me at info@tkhubworld.com. Thank you very much. I think we've got time for 1 or 2 questions.
We do have just a few minutes.
Yes. And I'll use this time to drink some water.
No roaming mic.
That's all right. Oh, is there a question over there? Yes. Oh. Hurry. No.
Where was the hand? Hand.
What's your favorite Pokemon?
Tentacruel. Quick story about that. I was playing Heart Gold, my first handheld Pokemon game. I had emulated it all time beforehand. Then what I realized was I was surfing off the shores of Goldenrod City, and I decided to try and find out what Pokemon were there. Looking for a Gyarados, I ended up with this massive Tentacruel, 5 levels higher than my Mons. And I was like, oh no, what's going to happen? So I threw out my first Mon, did nothing. So, he's out. Then came the next one. I went through all 6 of my Pokemon, Spinarak, Pidgeotto, Totodile's Evolution, which is Croconaw, and a couple of others. I got to the point where I had to reuse Croconaw, and I lowered its health down to red. And then I threw that Pokeball. Didn't go in. Second one, nothing. Third one, my Croconaw is also on red. I am almost whited out. I caught it. So I called it the bitch because it was a bitch to catch. And now it's not in the new game because of the whole Dexit thing. Yeah. One more question? Over there, yes.
Hi, I'm interested in how to better cater for neurodiversity in a digital context.
Yes.
Obviously, there's a lot of diversity within a neurodiverse group of people, but are there any overall guidelines or suggestions you have to make for digital?
Well, one of the things I didn't mention in this speech is spoon theory. So a lot of people with neurodivergent disabilities have something that they have limited energy, or they spend a lot more energy than you neurotypical folk. So the analogy was used when someone used a variety of spoons. I'm using Mentos, but the thing is, you can't see what's on this table, so I don't know why I did that. So you use a spoon to get up, spoon to shower, spoon to get to work, but let's say there's traffic, there's issues. All this takes up your energy. And when you get to the end of the day, you have very little spoons to do what you want and to relax. And so you have to try and navigate what you can do. Otherwise, you end up like myself and sleeping in my boss's car whilst he's driving me to the next school. The thing is, when it comes to designing for a neurodiverse background, you want to strip down your main items into the MVP. I love that because it also, I think there's a game of the play or something. But MVP is also the minimum viable product. So if you have your exit or log out thing through 5 different tutorials, I was trying to get my TK Hub World Twitter feed to work, but because I had to go through 6 different links and processes just to get that suspension lifted, I was exhausted by the end of the day. And that was right after I delivered the the workshop with you guys, which was fun. Yeah. If you guys have any more questions, please feel free to ask me after the session. I am very approachable. Unless you are a big fan of Waluigi, then this might get a bit personal. Yeah. Thank you guys for listening to my talk. I'll see you next time.